All right, today we're going to dive into the mystery of a true literary giant, a poet whose work you can find in almost every Iranian home, but whose own life story is practically a complete blank.
So let's just start with the big question. Who exactly was Hafez, the legendary 14th century Persian poet from Shiraz?
And the answer is, honestly, pretty shocking for someone this important. The truth is, we barely know anything about the man himself.
And that right there, that is the central paradox of Hafez. You have this monumental figure in world literature, but the person behind the name, Shamsuddin Muhammad Hafez Shirazi, is almost a complete ghost.
I mean, just think about this. We have no idea what he did for a living. We don't know about his schooling. We don't even know if his famous mysticism was part of some formal group or just something deeply personal. His family, his exact birth year, it's all disputed or just plain unknown. The man is a total historical enigma.
But here's the really wild part. Even with this giant question mark where his life story should be, his legacy is, well, it's absolutely colossal. It stretches across centuries and all around the globe.
You know, this guy was a superstar in his own lifetime, and his influence just kept growing. He shaped Persian poetry for hundreds of years, and even inspired Western titans like Goethe, whose famous West Eastern Diwan was a direct tribute to Hafez. In fact, get this, his book of poetry has been copied and recopied so many times that it has more variations than any other work in the entire Persian language.
So what does that tell us? It tells us that if we're digging around in his biography for the secret to his genius, we're looking in the completely wrong place. The key isn't in the facts of his life. It's woven right into the fabric of the poetry itself.
The secret, it isn't in the man at all. It's a core feature of his poetry, a deliberate, masterful decision to avoid certainty.
In Persian, there's a fantastic term for this, adam-e-qat'iyat, which basically means the lack of certainty. He creates this poetic space where you, the reader, can never land on a single provable meaning. And that's not a flaw, you see. That's the entire point. It's what makes his work so personal and why you can read it over and over again.
So how did he pull this off? Well, he absolutely perfected this incredible literary device, a technique that can turn one single word into a whole universe of meaning. It's called Iham. It's the art of the double, sometimes even triple or quadruple meaning. It's like the engine humming right below the surface of his poems, allowing a single phrase to work on multiple levels at the exact same time.
Okay, I know that sounds a little abstract, so let's look at a real example. Check out this verse, and I want you to pay close attention to that very last word, mardman.
Okay, so here's the magic. That one word, mardman, can mean pupils of the eye. That totally connects back to the first line's image of weeping blood, right? But it can also mean the people, as in all of humanity. So is this a deeply personal poem about one person's heartbreak? Or is it a universal statement about human suffering and longing? The answer is yes, it's both, at the exact same time.
And he doesn't just do this with single words. Hafez was a master at weaving this ambiguity into entire phrases, playing with the grammar and even the cultural idioms of the Persian language.
Take this phrase, dar az rakh to. Literally, it means far from your face. You know, while you were gone, I cried so much I lost my sight. Simple enough. But here's the thing. It's also a common saying, kind of like how we might say, God forbid, or heaven preserve you. Suddenly it adds this whole other layer of tenderness and respect for the person he's talking to, even while he's describing his own pain.
And this is where it gets really mind-blowing. The magic isn't just what's written down on the page. The meaning of the poem can literally change depending on how you, the reader, choose to say it out loud.
Okay, listen to this line. I'm going to read it one way, just as a straightforward statement of faith. Attribute it not to others, for these things God does. See? It sounds like a pious acceptance of God's will. Your fate is in God's hands.
Now listen to the exact same words, but just notice the change in my tone, a little questioning, almost skeptical. Attribute it not to others, for these things God does. Whoa, the verse completely flips on its head. It's no longer a statement of faith, it's a challenge. It's asking, are you really going to blame God for this? Incredible, right?
So, what's the big deal with all of this? Why does this ambiguity matter so much? Well, it's not just some clever literary trick. This lack of certainty is the absolute source of Hafez's timeless, enduring power.
It works like a chain reaction. You start with the poetic ambiguity, the Iham. That creates all these multiple meanings. And that invites you, the reader, to bring your own life, your own situation, your own feelings to the poem. It becomes a mirror reflecting your own soul back at you. And that is what makes it feel like it was written just for you, yesterday. It achieves timeless relevance.
This right here is exactly why he's the only poet whose work is famously used for divination, a practice called Hafez. For centuries, people have opened his book at random seeking guidance, and the poem always seems to speak directly to their situation because it's brilliantly designed to hold infinite situations within its verses.
And, Hafez himself was in on it. He knew the power his words had to give people hope. He even wrote about the practice himself, basically inviting readers to consult his verses whenever they felt lost or in despair.
And you have to remember, while this was an amazing artistic choice, it was also probably a very clever survival tactic. Hafez lived through incredibly turbulent times, under at least 3 different and often oppressive regimes. This style allowed him to bake in social and political criticism that he could always deny if a guard came knocking. It was a shield.
So, all of this leaves us with one final big question to think about. When a poem becomes a mirror that can reflect the soul of any person, in any century, does that grant the poet a form of immortality? And does it make the mystery of their actual life completely irrelevant?